Welcome to Fuller Speed Ahead. I'm Craig Fuller here with John Elliott, the CEO of Load One.
Good afternoon, Craig. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, appreciate you coming in. I'm excited to have an expediter here at Fuller Speed Ahead. I spent about 2 years in Expedite trucking.
I'm sorry.
It was the greatest part. I had so much fun in it because it was always this last minute recovery freight or emergency freight that had to be moved, and the action of that was addictive. So I worked a lot. We did a lot of work with Express One, and before it became
Mike
XPO,
Welch days,
and the Mike Welch and Jim Welch days.
Yeah, good friends of mine.
Yeah, so I rest in peace to Mike. Was certainly
terrible loss.
A dear mentor to me when I was much younger. But the expedite industry is a small part of the freight industry, but a really important part of what goes on in transportation.
Yeah, we're really the critical niche. I mean, in a perfect world, nobody wants to call us. It's much like nobody wants to call an ambulance. You want to make a doctor's appointment.
It's very expensive.
You want to drive yourself to the hospital. You don't want to call an ambulance, and that's really what we are. But I mean, there's times that it just has to happen. There's supply chain disruptions that occur, quality control disruptions, and then there's just things that just happen that require that kind of critical level of service, and the freight to be monitored and tracked for those kind of levels. And sometimes it's security reasons. Sometimes it's last minute. I mean, we have everything from airplanes that go down that need a jet engine, to an auto part supplier that goes down, to, I mean, we've even had like restaurant chains. We had the famous donut company was opening up a new store in Dallas, Texas. The first one in Texas ever. The governor was going to be there. The donut mix got damaged en route, and we had to expedite 2 50-pound bags or 30-pound bags of donut mix from the Carolinas nonstop to get to Texas so they can make the donuts when the governor cut the ribbon to walk through the door.
Yeah, the expedite business was so much fun. We did everything from moving Dick Cheney's luggage between sites when he was running for election. Another time we just
had one. It was Mark Wahlberg's gym, personal gym that he moves to every movie location to work out.
And he's got to make sure it's there.
Yeah, he monitors that to make sure it's important to him. It's something that he wants done and done at a certain level. So
one of my favorite shipments we did was when Molson Beer sold to Coors. We hauled. So he had a closing party in Baja California. Whoever the CEO or chairman of Molson was. And we hauled Molson Beer from Canada all the way to Baja California, and it was like a pallet of beer. And we're like, why are we hauling a pallet of beer?
Yeah.
There's a lot of beer in Mexico, but it was because they had sold. They announced it, but it was all this sort of, they wanted it there. But the expedite business is, I think it's just a fascinating industry. It's relatively small, about 10,000 trucks, I think, was sort of the number.
I honestly, I think that's an overestimate. I mean, a lot of truckload carriers claim to do expedite. And their idea of what expedite is versus what expedite is at a level, your top 5 expedite providers in the U.S. are really, it's a different product. We run everything from Sprinter vans, sleeper straight trucks, team straight trucks, lift gates, tractor trailers, dry van. I mean, we even have 30 tractors that just haul specialized retractable curtain sides. They do high dollar, high value kind of things. Everything from rocket engines that help take some of these spaceships that we're seeing go up now all the time. To, that was really cool. I was laughing because when the one finally landed and didn't blow up, I was like thinking I was disappointed because, well, they're like, no, John. The good news is those engines got to go off and go back and be refurbished and then go back. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's good. You get everything from that to, I mean, we hauled Bumblebee out to Jackson Barrett one time, for the Transformers and that.
The car.
The giant, mock-up robot or whatever. I mean, it's a fascinating business. I mean, yes, it's a lot of auto parts. It's a lot of manufacturing parts, aerospace, healthcare, things like that. But there are definitely some very interesting nuance items that get thrown in there that keeps it interesting for sure.
I remember we used to joke you're not curing cancer in freight, and then one time we had live organs that we were the only folks that could meet there, and medical equipment going into surgery. So there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we had about 6-9 months ago, we had an emergency load, and it was baby formula. And as crazy as that sounds, they had an infant that was in a hospital in Cleveland, and the child was determined it was allergic to all these things, and there was just a very certain kind of baby formula that this child could have, and the child hadn't been able to eat in like days.
Oh, wow.
And literally we had to go 700 miles nonstop with a Sprinter van to get that there, where you literally knew there was an infant waiting, and that was going to be the fastest route to be able to get that there, through security and all those items, and not take a chance of trying to put it on a plane or losing custody and control of it.
We would do a lot of recovery on. I remember we did a load for TRW. It was an airbag, and it was a truck that had shut down 60 miles outside the plant. And my ex-wife is Colombian, and so I was one night about 10 o'clock at night, and I'm on the floor at our old operation, and TRW calls, and the person on the phone is in El Paso. The person on the phone, she's the only person that spoke Spanish that happened to be up there. And she quoted a load. It was like a $12,000 margin load for 60 miles, and she got it because it was they needed it right then. And the alternative was the plant was going to shut down because of this airbag component or something they had.
Yeah, I would love to say we have those kind of margins. I mean, we're a lot higher dollar to move, but we're also incredibly inefficient. When you look at the world of transportation or trucking, everyone wants to optimize. You're trying to squeeze every penny. How do you pre-plan? We're the polar opposite. We're dealing with everything on the fly. We are the most inefficient model there is.
But you're dealing with all the stuff. You're the cleanup guy.
Yeah.
You have to clean up the stuff that's.
Yeah, it's like again. I use the ambulance reference.
Yeah.
And why do they have 30% more ambulance runs on a Wednesday night than on a Tuesday night? What in the world changed? But it just does. Things don't make sense. Those things shift dramatically. We have to deal with, sometimes we can anticipate a little bit natural disasters. When we see those coming, we're able to reposition equipment and shift accordingly and to support our customers or government or relief agencies and things like that. But most of it is just very little planning, unfortunately. I always, sometimes I'll talk to drivers and they'll be like, well, why can't we get like steady business? And I'm like, well, if a customer had to use us steady,
it's expensive.
They're going to be out of business. Well, it is not the optimal way to optimize your supply chain.
I got called into it was a national big box retailer, and we were hauling a lot of their freight. What they would do is at the end of the day at 4 p.m., they would just send over all the leftover freight. Now they're routing 10,000 loads a day, and we were handling 20 or 30. It wasn't huge, but they were spending a lot of money because we were 2, 3, 4 times the price. And they were upset because we were taking too much freight. And I'm like, if we're your first call, you got a problem. Like, we can be your first last call. We should not be the default call because stuff's not good. You have a problem in your operation.
Yeah.
We'll respond, but that's it.
There are times it's security. One of my biggest, it's funny, you watch the evolution or change of the world and the electronic world. I mean, one of my biggest customers used to be one of the people that produced the DVDs for all the movies.
Yep.
And those were not only, they were critical as far as, when it used to be a big thing when the movies were going to be released on DVD, and everyone, wanted those movies the weekend they came out. And on top of that, a lot of them weren't released yet.
Right.
So, they were high value because they didn't want those movies getting to the black market.
Yeah, and they're very valuable. I bet it's out of Memphis and a place in California, Southern California.
Yep. And they used to have a large facility in Detroit as well.
I had a lot of that
I'd say name that
business.
customer, but I watched how that customers had to evolve and change when suddenly, when's the last time you bought a DVD?
Yeah.
You download a movie now.
I think they're still relative big in freight.
They've shifted their business model, moved into some logistics, and they're still a good customer. But I can remember, days when you would get around towards the holidays, like this time of year, and they'd have blockbuster movie releases.
Oh, yeah.
And it would literally be, give me one truck an hour round the clock, nonstop.
And it wasn't just you; like everybody was there.
No, it didn't matter if there was one pallet ready to go or if there was 30.
On a release, we do 20 to 30 loads just out of like Memphis or I'm trying to think of a place in California. Started with a C. And my hours did the C. Cupertino, maybe Cupertino?
No, it was Cupertino close, but that's
Anyway,
Memphis, Detroit, and I'm drawing a blank now in California City as well, but.
It's I enjoyed the Expedite business. It was fun. I remember right after September 11 hit, and I was working at the airport because we had in those days had an airport to airport operation that competed against Ford Air. They ended up buying it after they just destroyed, like Bruce Campbell and Andy Clark completely obliterated our business because they were just really hard to compete with. Warrior was. But I was.
Oh, Andy went to Panther later.
Yeah,
so
he was at Panther, and then
that.
at Steve Robinson, and now he's doing some consulting. He's been at our conferences and stuff. But I remember right after September 11th, I was working at the DFW airport, and the planes had hit the towers, and if you live and work at the airport, you can always hear the aircraft in the background. It's sort of like you don't even notice it; it just becomes routine. But I remember it was this really eerie quiet, and about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the phone rang because all the aircraft were shut down, and we got called. I think it was 40 or 50 truckloads going from St. Louis to Andrews Air Force Base in Washington. We had no idea what it was, and we were told basically show up. But we hauled a lot of freight. You knew at some point something was happening.
Yeah, it was pretty devastating to us. I mean, not just what happened to our country and that, but as a company. At that time, my largest customer was Jaguar, and they had just launched the S-Type, which was not one of the best automotive launches in history.
It was, yeah. Not a very pretty car.
No.
Do you still do business with Jaguar?
No.
Okay.
I don't think we do.
I think
maybe a little
Jags
bit.
are really pretty. I've had Jag, yeah.
Yeah, I had a number of them, and that's part of how I got the business. And but they launched that model. So when you look at 50% of your fleet loaded inbound to airports. Because we were running charter planes over to England
For
every day.
And stuff.
Because there were so many quality control problems, and suddenly every airport shut down, won't take the freight.
Yeah.
Suppliers aren't taking the freight back.
Yeah.
It's like half your fleet became landlocked for weeks, and just
We were doing a lot of ground because when the aircraft got shut down, people were looking for capacity, and so we were actually moving a lot of freight. On the ground as a sort of recovery operation.
So we were more truckload then. We had evolved into being a true expedite carrier.
Oh, so you guys were originally just truckload?
Yeah, we were regional truckload.
Okay.
And then we first started, and it was about 2 to 3 years into it that the expedite piece came through. And I'd love to tell you it was an epiphany of mine or something. Probably about 2 years into it. But a lady named Jenny was my very first employee. And when I started off, and I've been an operations manager for a truckload carrier. I come from a truckload family. My grandfather started a trucking company, still runs today. My father was an executive in trucking for years, and of course, what else am I gonna do? I said, the hell with that. I'm getting out of trucking, and I got a degree in aviation management. You can see how that worked out for me. Now I own one of the largest expedite companies in the U.S. So, but she came to work for me, and it was funny because once we started to add employees, suddenly she was very mother hennish about the whole thing, and thumping her chest and said, I'm like, Jen, you're not the boss. You're just as you were first, you're the boss. Well, she struggled with that, so she left, went to a really small, like 10 truck expedite company in Detroit. About 2-3 months later, she calls me up. She says, John, I messed up. I'm sorry. I realized completely and that, and I'd like to come back. I'm like, Jenny, as long as you understand, I'd love to have you back. As long as you can play nice with everyone and that. And she's like, yeah, I got it. So she came back and shows up at my office door one day, and she goes, John, she goes, this company over there, they had one guy, he was an owner-operator, he had a straight truck and a cargo van. And because, they're playing with the numbers, they're cheating this guy, he's a super nice guy, and that. And I'm like, Jenny, we're 53-102. I'm like, I have no idea what I would do with a cargo van. I said, no, that's not what we do. Okay. A week later, she was at my office door again. John. I said, 3 weeks later, she's at my office door again. Finally, I'm like, oh. She's like, I think I can keep them moving. That. I said, okay, Jenny, but you got to do your regular job too. This doesn't work. It's going away. And today we're proud to say we're the largest privately held expedite company in the U.S. In my book, I'll make it an epiphany that I saw market forces shifting and coming, but
it never
really,
worked out
Jenny would have to be the true story of how that started.
So my expedite was I was calling on air freight forwarders at the DFW airport, and because we had this airport-to-airport operation that U.S. Express had ran, and I was known as a truckload guy because I had been in truckload, and all of the airport-to-airport LTO folks didn't understand truckload, so they didn't want to sell what they called exclusive use vehicles, and so they would call me up at the DFW airport, and so I got this idea that I was going to start a business, and I went to my dad and said, hey, I think I can get 6 to 8 loads a day, and he sort of patted me on the head and goes, well, why don't you do it with us? And so, and he goes, I'll give you a fleet. So This is 2002. The economy was slow, freight was slow, but they never delivered the fleet. As operations people, were not going to do it. They just didn't believe in giving, the boss's son a fleet to run. So, but I had all these customers.
That's why I don't work for my family either.
I don't either.
It's a mixed blessing, but
But all these loads were lined up, and I was able to get it. And so I started, getting upset because I'm like, I had customers, and I call, and my dad makes some phone calls, and I get a phone call and said, you can have as many trucks as you want within 6 hours of 60 major U.S. markets. And I think at the time they thought we'd get 2 or 3 loads a day. We built that business. We were doing about 140 million in revenue in 2 years, and it was basically on-demand trucking. And it was just we took everything. You never said no.
Yep.
And I got involved.
You can't in our business.
What's that?
You can't in our business.
No, and I remember we had a company called CTX. Remember CTX?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They came down and they pitched.
They're still in existence. They're right down the street from me.
Okay, well they were part
today.
of. I thought they got shut down.
Part of Universal now.
Oh, that's why they got
Yeah,
shifted,
it's part of
right?
Universal. Yeah, I don't.
They came down. There was a sales guy that came down, and he talked about $3 a mile rates, and no one believed him. They're like, "You can't get $3 a mile. We're getting $1.20. This is like as big as they could get." And it was just an eye-opening experience. But it was a lot of fun.
Oh, there were times I was seeing better rates on a cargo van than I was on a tractor trailer.
Yeah.
That market's shifted back, obviously.
Well, there were times when we were, literally you could get $6, $7, $8 a mile because we didn't have a fixed matrix. We would walk into shippers and say, we'll give you as much capacity as you want, but we can't guarantee a price. And we would end up turning 100, 200 loads a day because you just couldn't handle
It's the ultimate supply-demand model.
Exactly.
It really is.
But it only exists, there's always a supply and demand imbalance somewhere. But there are certain times of the month and certain times of the year where there's a massive supply and demand.
Traditionally.
imbalance.
Now, the last year or two has been much like a lot of carriers.
Yeah. Well, last year was really tight. We would have made a lot of money in those days.
Yeah.
If I were still there. The challenge that we had.
I was a lot happier last year than this year.
I imagine you were.
Yeah.
I had heard that I think it was in May, that 60% of we had an Expedite that we talked to. He said 60% of his business had dropped off in the month of May.
Bob Poulos. Yeah.
Bob Poulos, yeah. You know Bob.
I know.
Yeah.
The whole market definitely took a downturn.
Has it gone back?
It's firmed up somewhat. The problem is we live and die in the spot market.
Yeah.
On the high 80% of our business.
Spot. You're not even like spot as what most people. You're on the extreme side of the spot market.
Yeah, we can look at every chart. We can look at that. It'll give us a tiny glimpse of indication, but it really is not a telling story.
You're the
for us.
first to go when the economy slows down.
We're the lead indicator, up or down. Now, on a bright note, hopefully for your viewers, we're starting to see some strengthening the last couple of weeks, which gives me a little bit of hope.
Is it seasonal, or do you think it's really fundamental?
I think it's traditionally for us, this is a little too late in the season.
Okay.
So I'm hoping it's fundamentals. There were a lot of weird things. We had the tariffs this year, the GM strike. There were just a lot of factors that affected our market on top of the increased capacity placed upon it. You got those things. In our world, the small van market is really oversaturated, and you've got a lot of
ELDs are not a factor, right?
No,
They're not mandated
not in that
to do
class,
ELDs.
under 10,000.
Did you see a lot of the 18-wheeler guys shift into the Sprinters?
Not so much. I think, we see the migration more of the tractor trailer guys is that they move into the straight trucks.
Okay.
Sometimes you get a little older, it's a little more comfortable for them to handle that versus the 53. It's easier to park, it's easier getting out of places.
Yeah.
And a lot of our straight trucks are teams. And what they'll find is that when they get older, the wife says, I want to go with you. She's not going to get a Class A and drive that truck. But they're a lot more open-minded to drive a Class B sleeper straight truck. We've got a lot of them that we're going to buy big motorhomes, let's say, and retire and drive around America. Well, instead they got 110-inch custom sleeper on that straight truck, 22-foot box. They're driving around America getting paid for it.
Yeah.
If they get somewhere like if they get San Diego, a lot of times they'll say, hey, we're going off 3 days. They'll go to the campground, pull it right into an RV spot, hook it up, and
go to the
see
zoo
what they want to
and
see.
check out the platypuses.
Yeah, they can see around America, visit their families, this, that, so they really enjoy it. The van market, again, it's like a lot of things. The barrier to entry is very low, and so you see a ton going in, a ton going out, and unfortunately, what we've really struggled for is the legal aspect of it. Being that those vehicles are unregulated, they don't have to display DOT numbers, and that unless you pull hazmat and certain things, which a lot of them don't care. They don't, being the fact that they don't get pulled into scales generally, they don't get checked. They don't tend to carry the proper insurance, and that's why you see a ton of unmarked vehicles driving around.
There was a big bankruptcy a few weeks ago. It was an RV hauler that had the second largest RV hauler in the country had filed bankruptcy because of a nuclear lawsuit because they were using like F-150s or F-350s to haul these RVs.
Yeah.
Are those guys in your market? Do you see them coming?
Not the RVs like that, but the van problem is very similar. These guys are running around, they run on their own insurance versus running on the carrier's insurance. These carriers, we're a traditional model. Every vehicle in our fleet, whether it's a Sprinter van, a straight truck, or a tractor trailer, we insure.
Yep.
Liability and cargo are on us. What they call a multi-carrier, they'll take an individual, he goes gets his own policy, his own insurance policy. He doesn't need authority because he's under limits. So he'll sign up and run for 3 multi-carriers at one time. They're providing insurance to the customer on their cert, but it's not the actual insurance that covers the vehicle hauling their freight.
Yeah.
They're unmarked vehicles. They have no numbers, no names on them, but they've saturated so much of the expedite freight market and driven rates down because, again, half the time they're running on car insurance.
Yep.
If I was paying, I read them on these guys posting online and everybody complaining about paying $1,200-$1,300 a year for liability and physical damage and cargo, and I'm like, I pay 4, 5, 6 times that, to insure, because we'll insure a Sprinter van at the same level that we insure a tractor trailer, and that stuff. I mean, and we have customers that, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of customers, like you were saying with the RV deal, the nuclear verdicts, start to get hit with accidents and liability lawsuits and things like that. And I'll try to explain to customers, like, well, John, can you match that rate? I'm like, no, we can't match that rate. And there's reasons.
But if something goes wrong,
you're going to pay for it. And I feel bad is how many times the customer will be like, well, but we got insurance, sir. We're good. I'm like, no, you're not good.
You don't have $200 million.
Exactly.
And when that comes into account.
And sure as heck, I tell you what, probably every 6-9 months I'll have a customer call me up and said, hey, we've got this lawsuit going on, or we had a carrier had this accident and this happened. Their insurance company denied it because they said they didn't insure the vehicle. The insurance on the vehicle was denied because it wasn't interstate trucking insurance. Somebody like State Farm doesn't write that, so they denied the claim. Now they're suing us. Is this what you were talking about? And I'm like, this is exactly what I was talking about. You don't have that issue if you go into the top 5, 6, 7 expedite companies in the U.S.
Yeah.
All their vehicles are logoed, they're numbered, they're compliant.
Yeah,
they're insured the proper way, but it's the Wild West.
Right.
It's the Wild West. You drive home tonight and look how many unmarked Sprinter vans or Ford Transits driving down the road. They're not all local plumbers, or florists.
Yeah.
These guys are hauling freight and just disrupting the market, due to non-compliance.
Yeah, that's. It's going to be interesting to sort of see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of nuclear lawsuits. Something has to be done there. Right?
Oh, without a doubt, tort reform has to happen. I know it's a big goal of the ATA now. They've announced, and got fingers crossed, but that's going to be
TCA.
big.
John was saying that they're also really trying to get into that. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what Washington does.
That's going to be a big uphill battle.
Yeah.
You're going up against lobbyists for the legal side that's got deep pockets.
The Democrats don't want tort reform.
No.
Because they actually want to go. They effectively some of the political positions are going to end. Private equity. They're trying to say that's bad and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know where it ends up.
It's going to be an uphill battle. At some point, though, these lawsuits. I mean, the cost is. I mean, we've had great safety numbers. We're in captive insurance, high deductible, do all these things. Camera systems in the trucks, safety systems, all these things, and we still saw a double-digit increase in insurance this year.
You're paying for the guys that.
Yeah.
Don't.
Well, yeah. We came in at 11%, and my agent looked at me and said, "That's a great number."
Yeah.
And when do you see a double-digit increase and say "great number" in the same sentence?
Yeah.
But I've got friends in the industry and that are seeing 20, 30% increases.
And you're talking about you're talking about just primary
liability, let
get
alone
into
secondary.
Catastrophic.
Oh yeah, get into the secondary levels. And people are exiting the market. It's only going to get harder and harder. That market is going to keep firming up. I mean, I think next year and the year after are going to be the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's going to. I think it's unfortunately going to thin the herd even more. And on one hand, and on the other hand, I think in the end, it's going to drive up rates, and that goes back to the consumer.
Yeah.
It's not free. All these big $1 million lawsuits, $20 million, $100 million lawsuits, ultimately it's you or me that pay that.
Yeah.
It's not the insurance company.
No, for sure. It's really unfortunate. I wanted to ask you, are you independent? Are these independent contractors or actually employees?
We're a mix.
Okay.
We're a mix. We have company tractors. The owner-operator industry is owner-operator based. All the big providers are in that. I'm not sure why it's so different than the tractor world. Yeah, apparently that went back to the Roberts Express days and things like that, where the industry first started, because they pretty much invented pretty taboo. Roberts Express is really the first one to come up, and it's very taboo. It's not like the tractor world where you can have a mix, and that's very common, and drivers don't have a problem with that, but. In the expedite world, it's 99% owner-operator based. Yeah,
when we were doing sort of fulfilling capacity for the expediters, we were using company drivers effectively to do it. I have to ask you, AB 5 California, this independent contractor legislation, where effectively it almost makes it impossible to have, effectively outlaws dedicated independent contractors. I'm curious, how are you thinking of that? There's discussion about it. Illinois and New Jersey also passed.
And I know New Jersey's back on it now. I don't know. I don't know what they see as the end game there. It's sad when the American dream of owning your own business is suddenly outlawed, or suddenly bad. It's such a paradigm shift for our country. And unfortunately, California tends to be a paradigm shift in
California,
a lot of ways.
Look at the power. They won't maintain the power because of the cost and the environmental regulations around it, and then they end up having to cut it off. It's a mess.
Yeah, it's an oxymoron. I was out there and I was watching the news, and they were talking about San Francisco Airport had banned plastic water bottles.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I guess that makes sense. But again, I don't think a lot of those things are thought through well enough. Because they had a guy from the beverage industry speaking on the news, and he goes, well, yeah. He goes, but 90% of those people are now going to get a pop or a fruit juice.
Yeah, soda.
And those bottles are 5 times heavier plastic. The water bottles are thinner.
Yeah.
He goes, so the net result is going to be more plastic generated, not less.
Yeah.
And that's just a classic example of, I think, you put the cart in front of the horse with policy and that. And I think this independent contractor deal is the same type thing.
Yeah, it's like a paintball fight of just a lot of stuff going on, and everybody's sort of
it's a lose-lose.
Firing at everybody, and
it's only going to drive costs up. More regulation, I don't think, is ever the answer in any industry or any part of the country. But
no, as I get older, I've been to China where they have regulations, but then they don't honor them. There are certain things that clean water that I expect, clean air, but you take it to start regulating how people operate their businesses and the right to operate a business as they see and deem fit.
That was the American dream.
Yeah.
You're an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. That's what drives this country.
Yep.
When you start regulating out the ability to be an entrepreneur.
But it's also some of the most successful companies of the past decade have been the companies that are platforms with independent contractors like Uber and Lyft and Airbnb, and effectively what the state of California is saying is those businesses are, even though they're based in our state, we don't want them. So
yeah,
it is a crazy time.
I shake my head at it. I just shake my head at it. I just don't.
We can't diagnose
they
that.
They regulate against their own goals.
Yeah.
So
sure.
it just seems like chasing their tail. I
think so, and it's just going to get more and more pronounced. We're going into an election cycle next year. So
I know I'm an officer of the TCA. I know it's on our radar. The things that we're really watching right now and concerned about to see if other states jump on this bandwagon, or if hopefully it stays in California.
Yeah. Well, this is a big factor in Britain too. They're eating their pudding. They're trying to figure out are they going to be in Europe?
Well, they put Uber out of London.
They did. It's it's not just in the U.S. We forget that it's. Sometimes we like to think about that, but I have friends over in London and are like, our situation is even worse than yours is, because we were talking about having to stock up product because we're cutting ourselves off on all these trade agreements. Oh, okay. So it is a universal problem, and it seems like a generational problem. Look at Hong Kong. What's happened in Hong Kong with you have this democratic, this generation that's grown up under sort of democratic and free speech is allowed, and all of a sudden, they could be extradited to mainland China. It's a scary time and a lot to talk about that goes well beyond freight. It's going to be an interesting election cycle. John, really appreciate you coming on. We got to do this again. It was fun getting back to the Expedite days. If you enjoyed this show, please tune in to FreightWaves TV. You can find it on Apple TV, Roku, or all other digital platforms where you can find streaming content. Be sure to download the app today and tune in to FreightWaves TV. And thanks for watching.